So I was just going to show you the testing procedure that I used for the engine temp sensor. There's a million different ways to do it. I'll just show you the way that I did it. So here I am in the kitchen. Got a little glass of water here. Just kind of check to see, don't want to really submerge it all the way, but just so that it's on the brass part there. I'll be using this multimeter today. I know it's a little bit fancier, but it doesn't have to be a fancy one. And I just happen to have these connectors here, which will help make it a little bit easier for me while I'm recording, but it's not necessary. So I'm going to start by placing the water into the microwave. I don't know, there's no specific time or anything. I'm just going to put it in there for a couple minutes, 2.5 minutes, and then I'll be back. Okay, so while I wait for the water to boil, I will show you how I connect these. So essentially you just got 2 pins. It doesn't really matter which one's positive or negative. We're just going to be ohming the sensor out. Alright, so I got my 2 connections going to each one on each pin of the temp sensor. It's reading 2.8K, so 2,800 ohms, and which, I mean, for the temperature that's at, probably could be okay. The main thing is when you heat or cool the sensor, you would like to see the numbers move very fluidly in the direction that you're going. So the amount of resistance will drop as heat is applied. I don't have the exact readings for this sensor, but I'm just going to really show you the difference between a good sensor and a bad sensor. The only other piece of equipment you'll need for this test is a thermometer. This happens to be a candy thermometer for cooking, but I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as it's a thermometer and it will read the temperature of the water. So what you'd like to see is that as the water temperature increases, the amount of resistance that the sensor senses should decrease. Alright, so I'm pulling this water out. It was blowing some bubbles in there, so it's definitely hot enough to be able to see something, some type of a change. So you want to know what the temperature of the water is. So you can see it's going up there. Now we're going to watch the resistance on here change. You can see it's dropping. So it looks like our water temperature is probably about 175 or so degrees on the thermometer here, Fahrenheit. So you can see it's down to 600 now. Alright, so we're kind of equalized here now. So we got 570. Got 546 ohms at this temperature. It's about 170-ish now. Now you see how it kind of fluidly moved upwards. So now I'm going to remove this from the water and let it start cooling. As it cools, you should see the numbers start to rapidly increase fluidly the whole way, so perfect increments. You shouldn't see no crazy changes or anything like that. I think typically speaking, at like room temperature, you should see, 2,000, 2,500 ohms. Okay, so you see how it just flashed right there? That was losing continuity. I mean, that's not good. You don't want that. 700 now as it cools here. We'll just watch it as it cools and just make sure it's moving fluidly. And just to speed this process up a little bit, I'm going to get some cool water. Oh, okay, there we go. There's a jump. So it went straight from about 800 or so ohms right up to 2,2500 ohms. That's not what you want. You don't want it just jumping around like that randomly. I don't know the exact temperature of this, but I mean, I'd say it's still probably at least close to 100 degrees. So I got some cool water here. We're going to dunk it in this cool water. See how it's just jumping all over. I'm pretty sure 3,600 ohms is probably pretty high. Now back down to 13, but you can see how it's jumping around. That's how we know that this sensor is not reading correctly. On the side here, we'll try to do this real quick so the water doesn't cool down too much. Alright, so we got a brand new sensor here in a bag. Alright, 1 second, I'll connect. Alright, so room temperature. And I just took it out of the box, so I mean, probably warming up a little out of here. Anyways, alright, so this water we got here. $150, let's see here. I guess we'll see what it actually, right around that 175 mark right now. So put that in. So a little bit over 175, we're probably pushing 180-ish on the temperature of the water. So as you can see, it's moving pretty fluidly. Still dropping. Alright, so we pretty much equalized here about 315 ohms at about 175-ish degrees. Now we'll take the sensor out and we'll see that it moves fluidly as it climbs. So I did see like a short form of a chart of about how many ohms for how many degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not 100% sure if it was for this exact sensor or not, but I will display that after this. But you can see it just climbs fluidly. There's no gaps in it. It's not jumping around. There's no big discrepancies. And that's the main thing. That's the big difference between a good sensor and a bad sensor. So you don't really probably need to know the exact ohmage for certain Fahrenheit. And then just to accelerate the process, I will get some cold water to cool the sensor down a little faster. Just see what it does. And there's some cooler water. So it's definitely climbing faster now. nice and fluidly. Not having a bunch of jumping around or any craziness. It's moving incrementally as it's cooling. I guess we could check and see what the temperature of the water is now. Just have an idea of. I guess this only goes down to 100, and this is definitely cooler than 100 degrees, so. So it's back to around room temperature. You can see it's like, 2200 K again, 2200 ohms again. So it was just kind of to show you the difference between a good sensor and a bad sensor. Alright, so here's where we're at. Here is the engine temperature sensor removed. So you can see it's right behind the horn here in that hole. This is the connector that goes to it. Checking out the connector, you want to make sure that the pins are tight and there's no broken wires or anything like that. Also, it's nice to have this boot on here be solid. You don't want a bunch of moisture and stuff getting in there into your connections or anything. So now to put the new one in. I literally just push the horn out of the way here. I happen to have a 3-inch lift on my tank. Makes it a little bit easier to get to. You might have to lift your tank to do this. But this sensor here is just going to go into that hole back there. It's probably going to be too hard to do while I'm filming. I don't have all my nice snap-on stuff from work here. I just got a cheap 3/4 inch spark plug socket. I just pulled the rubber out of there so it wasn't going to get in the way of the sensor. And then, dollar store 3/8 cheapo stuff. So there's the sensor right there. Just gonna stick the socket right on there and take her out. So I just went ahead and pushed that protective boot up so I could check out these wires and stuff, and everything looks perfect in here, perfectly clean. Don't have no moisture, no corrosion. Pins look nice and tight if I look inside of there. Yeah, so I would say the wiring's all good. So for reinstalling this, I like to pull the boot up on there, just to make it a little easier. You can see the sensor up in there and its little home. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the sensor on there, get that connector to click on, and then I'm just gonna push the boot back down. Once again, you're just gonna make sure you get this rubber boot all the way down on there, so you can keep all the wires and stuff nice, because problems with the wires are way worse than problems with the sensor. Worse to diagnose and worse to work on. So then I'm just gonna turn the horn back down to where it was and let's give her a rip.